He knows his business. So does the navigator. If you're going to Hawaii and you see icebergs, yes, you'd have to write the navigator, but you never have to write them because they know their business. When engineers build bridges, you don't write them. They know what they're doing. And their language, by the way, is not subject to interpretation. The language that we use today does not make it possible for us to talk to one another. We talk at each other. Language was designed hundreds of years ago, and there's no basis for good communication. For example, the Holy Bible. People read it and they interpret it their own way. That's why you have the Lutherans, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Catholics, because the Bible is subject to interpretation. The language of physics, chemistry, engineering is not subject to interpretation. When you send a blueprint to another country, they can turn out the same car, the same building, not subject to interpretation. Same with medical prescriptions. They're not subject to interpretation. So every time you talk to people, they hear what you say, but it goes through their head and their background, and they interpret it differently. That's why we're always surprised of what people say. They say, well, you said this, or you said that. The language does not enable us to talk to one another. So I do a session called The Limitless Dimensions of Human Stupidity. And I just want to tell you what that means. In World War II, we flattened out Germany. France was bombed by the Germans. Britain was bombed. Millions of people were killed, women and children. And so the cost of war, I'm not talking about just the money cost for weapons and training soldiers and taking care of them after the war. All those medical bills are paid for by people. The cost of World War II could have eliminated poverty on earth, housed everyone, built hospitals all over the world. That's what I mean by we're not civilized yet. As long as there's wars, police, prisons, armies, navies, we're not civilized. And no one can be civilized because it's an ongoing process. There is no such thing as a civilized nation. When I say it's an ongoing process, just like your laptop, every year it gets faster, lighter, better, and your cameras today use no film. There's no fixed utopias possible, no final frontiers. All these notions about the Venus Project is utopian. We have no fixed notion of what the ideal society is because it's always undergoing change. Now, that's what the problem is with the word love. They keep using that word. There's not enough love in the world, not enough kindness. First of all, there's no such thing as love. What happened to love when people divorce? She says, I want the car, I want the house, and I want the children. He says, oh yeah, let me tell you what I want. So you see, what happened to love? Love is a fluctuating thing. No more than you love everything you've ever done in life. When you think about your own life, you don't like everything you've done. Sometimes you like yourself, sometimes you don't, sometimes you dislike yourself. So if you marry somebody, you love them more, sometimes a little less, sometimes you actually hate them. So love is not a constant, it's a fluctuating thing. As long as you don't teach kids in school how to live, how to relate to one another, how to use communication in an intelligent way, how to manage the earth's resources intelligently, you have no basis for a good economy. The liberal today points out the shortcomings of our society, which is nothing at all. If you don't offer an alternative method of solving a problem, then you have nothing to say. It would be considered gibberish.
Well,
most of our language is gibberish. It's about nothing. It's about how we feel, and how we feel has nothing to do with reality. If you don't want automobile accidents, you have to put sensors on cars so they can't hit each other. You know, a Radio City and the Empire State Building take 1 million people up and down every year, and they never collide, never have accidents. What you have to do is turn the elevator system horizontal so that you press or dial where you want to go, the art center or music center. As long as people drive cars freely drive cars, you can't prevent accidents. There is no way, like saying no to drugs was written by a pinhead.
Well, that for me makes a wonderful segue. We've got to go to a commercial break, and we'll be right back with Jacques Fresco, Roxanne Meadows, and Peter Joseph to hear more about pinheads, a resource-based economy, and how certain things are happening today that we may not be fully aware. But we'll be right back with more Good Vibrations right after this.
Welcome back. You're listening to Good Vibrations, Tools for Transformation with Solazar and Kirillani on AM 540 KRXA.
And this is Solazar. We want to remind our listeners that they can call in at 1-888-579-2540 or in the 831 area code, 831-899-5792. And we're talking with Jacques Fresco and Roxanne Meadows from the Venus Project and Peter Joseph, producer of Zeitgeist and Zeitgeist Addendum. And I have to admit, Jacques, even though you may not like the word, I just love the way you express things. You're just right to the point. And, Peter, I wanted to ask you something based on what Jacques was sharing and Roxanne were sharing about the resource-based economy. Now, in Zeitgeist and Zeitgeist Addendum, we spend a great deal of time trying to explain the monetary system.
You were right to the point.
And some of the issues that come about based on the monetary system. Can you share with our listeners, some of the challenges or kind of inherent flaws that the monetary system brings out?
Well, yes, I can. I'm trying to figure out where to begin on that one because it's such an exceptionally vast. As Jacques pointed out prior, anything that money touches, it becomes corrupt because in order to gain money, you have to have a position of differential advantage, and this goes for corporations, this goes for governments. The world essentially, due to money, the world is basically a bunch of mafias on one level or another. First thing I would say is that, when it comes to monetary policy, money is scarce. So not only are resources supposedly scarce on this planet, mainly because corporations make the most money off of resource scarcity, so they have a strong motivation to either lie about that scarcity or deliberately create it. But money itself is scarce. There's not enough money to cover all of the outstanding debt that's in existence because of the use of interest. If people aren't familiar with that, it's called the fractional reserve lending policy. And I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I'll just leave it with the point that money is literally scarce. And if you look carefully, there's no way the system would work otherwise. If we just equitably distributed money, nothing would get done, right? Because that's the fuel of the entire capitalist enterprise, to keep people in a limited position so they have to constantly submit to servitude in order to gain income. So that's the most cataclysmic right there. And if you just think about that, that creates a strong motivation or incentive to be corrupt on almost every level you can come out with. In fact, the medical establishment, as a classic example, is probably the most corrupt right now, especially in America. I don't even know where to begin with that subject, but considering that our health is basically in the hands of the medical cartels, if you will, which is very much provable, we are not told about all sorts of treatments that are out there that are very, very beneficial to humanity. Why? Because if it's not patentable, then it's not going to come out because money can't be made off of it. If there's already an institution that's in power that has, say, connections to the FDA, well, they're going to have a strong motivation to influence the FDA not to allow, say, the approval of a new treatment for, say, cancer or what have you. So on that basic level, the whole thing is based on a gaming strategy. And just like you would manipulate in a game of Monopoly, the same thing happens, except human lives are at stake. People don't trust each other in this system. Why would you? I think Jacques gave a great example in Zeitgeist Addendum, when you go to a doctor, and believe me, I've gone to doctors and I've walked out, been very suspicious about what they told me. I had one doctor tell me I should have surgery for my back, and I later found out, which would have costed over $100,000, and I later found out 2 years later that was absolute nonsense. So I have to ask myself, was this doctor incompetent, or did he just want money? I don't know. And that's really a big problem in this system. We don't trust each other. We're not working together. We're at war. Everyone is chiseling off of each other. It's parasitic.